All right, so this is the Ascension of Babylon. Welcome to my channel. What we do is we talk about the healing process, we talk about the occult, we talk about spiritual self-development and self-development in general. So if that's your thing and you're new here, absolutely subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it. And what we're going to be getting into in this video is how to protect yourself from darker entities, how to protect yourself from spiritual attack. And this is actually something that so many people are deeply afraid of. In fact, it's that deep suppressed fear that a lot of people have that can actually attract this kind of entity into, their lives. Now, there's a lot of misunderstandings about what a dark entity actually is. So, when you hear a lot of channelers talk and people in the new age and certain people that are exercising their psychic abilities, yes, and sometimes they're even sensing that there's some type of entity around a person that is maybe causing all types of havoc in their life because they haven't deconstructed from their religious programming. And you can have religious programming whether your parents were religious or not, or whether the person was ever religious or not. Because they haven't deconstructed from that religious programming, they're filtering this psychic, we could say, information through that pre-existing belief that they may not be aware of, and they're thinking what they're sensing is some type of demonic entity or some type of extraterrestrial being that is just messing with the person. And this actually isn't the case. When we're talking about darker extraterrestrial forces, these are not forces that are trying to mess with mankind. These are not forces that are just showing up to people and making their lives hard because they're these bad demons that, Christianity and the entertainment industry has programmed people to think they are. But a majority of people, when they are kind of tuning in to what is taking place psychically, they will interpret this dark entity as being something that most people would call demonic. And the truth is, that's not actually what it is. When someone is being attacked by a darker entity, when a darker entity is showing up in this way, a lot of times it's going to be a negative astral entity. And there's a difference between a negative astral entity and a darker extraterrestrial consciousness. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, a darker extraterrestrial consciousness could be something like a gray alien, a reptilian, certain forces that people would actually consider demons that are actually ancient primal gods and goddesses that were worshipped a lot of the time in the Middle East, but Christianity slapped the label of demon on them to get people to be afraid of them and to help their, paradigm and religion take over. But once again, these extraterrestrial forces are not responsible for what a lot of people are usually becoming receptive of when certain phenomena is taking place and a person is under some type of psychic attack by an entity. These are going to be negative astral entities that are actually the creation of the human energy field. So what these entities actually are is the personification of very dense energy that stores itself within the person. And that dense energy is going to be suppressed emotional resonance. Over time, as this suppressed emotional resonance carries more and more of a charge, because the nature of all things is kind of to expand, well, the expansion that takes place here is actually a level of sentience that begins to form from that suppressed emotional state. And this can create an astral entity. And there are personal astral parasites, we can call them. And then there are collective astral entities that are a little more sentient, and they're actually collections of suppressed emotional resonance that gets uplined to the astral realm, and it forms what you can think to be a greater intelligence that can actually roam the astral plane, affecting and afflicting different people who are already in resonance with it. And what I just said is really important to understand. Affecting and afflicting people who are already in resonance with it. Meaning, you cannot actually be attacked by one of these entities if you're not already in energetic resonance with it. So what is it that's going to put you in energetic resonance with one of these astral entities? It's going to be suppressed emotional resonance, and it's also going to be these protective fragmentations within your psyche. So to understand what I'm saying, I just have to educate you a little bit on the nature of trauma in relation to fragmentation in your psyche, because this is what will put you in resonance with these kinds of beings. This is what will actually create them on a personal level, and this is what you need to work through in order to move out of resonance with this kind of spirit. So in our early childhood, we experience trauma. And because we're not taught how to process it, and we're usually shamed in some way, shape, or form, whether our parents mean to do this or not, we're shamed for the emotion, and we don't really feel safe to express it. Sometimes we even get told that it's inappropriate. So when we feel anger, or, whatever the negative emotion is that's a result of the trauma that we experience, we fragment from the emotion, and we have to create this protective part of ourselves, which can take the form of a subpersonality. It can take the form of an identity, and this identity has its own way of thinking, its own thought process, perceptions, and beliefs that it carries to keep us safe from the suppressed emotional resonance that is sitting underneath the surface of that protective adaptation that we need to create to survive the trauma and to keep those emotions from coming flooding to the surface in a way that, if we don't have the proper education, which of course we don't when we're early, in our early childhood, well, in a way that would be very inconvenient when we're going to school and we're forming relationships and we're, later on having a family and going to work and things of that nature. So these adaptations are meant to protect us, but it comes at a major price. And that price is going to be the ability to be our fully authentic self. So being our fully authentic self, this is a very high vibrational, or we can even say a high frequency state to exist in. But when we're not being authentic, because we have these protective adaptations that we're filtering our experience through, and we have all of these suppressed emotional resonances, this keeps us in a low vibrational state or a low frequency state. And when we're in that state, this is when we not only create, but we also attract astral entities into our experience. And these entities can potentially cause a lot of havoc if we're not aware of how to actually work with what is being triggered to the surface as a result of the entity. So when one of these entities shows up, the first instinct that somebody has is to banish it, to get rid of it, and things of that nature. And this is very similar to the Western medical field's approach to dealing with an illness. They don't want to address the root cause, They want to address the surface level symptom, which is what most people experience as the illness or as the disease. But the truth is that illness or disease has a deeper root in the energetic field, a deeper root in the emotional body. So it's the same thing with the manifestation of one of these entities. We need to address the deeper root. And the deeper root is going to be the fragmentations. And it's the fragmentations, the protective fragmentations, that are actually keeping us from the deeper root, which is that emotional resonance that we have been suppressing. So on a subconscious level, to wake us up to what's taking place in our system, we might attract a negative astral entity to cause a pattern interruption in our lives that could potentially lead us down a path of processing those emotions. Because when one of these entities shows up, there can be disharmony in your relationship, disharmony at work. You might go into these very anxious thought loops. You might start having these nightmares, and they're going to act as a trigger for all of these suppressed energies, these suppressed emotions that you've been shelling yourself away from. And this trigger is a good thing. So if you suspect that maybe a negative astral entity is kind of causing a little bit of disharmony in your life, you don't want to just jump right to banishing it away. You want to start feeling through the emotions that that entity is triggering to the surface. So what are these emotions? Maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's anger. Maybe you're feeling like you don't have control, right? And this scares you. The whole spectrum of negative emotions is what you could potentially feel, and you want to start wiring yourself to be completely present with those emotions without judging them, because those emotions are actually connected to the wounded parts of you that have externalized themselves in the form of this negative astral entity encounter that you are experiencing, or in the form of the negative astral entity that you actually unconsciously created. And the only way to actually get rid of the astral entity is to move out of resonance with it by processing and transmuting what within yourself is the root cause of why that entity is actually showing up in the first place. So when one of these entities shows up, there's going to be this pattern interruption. And potentially there may be things that you could lose. So for instance, let's say you're in a relationship, and deep down, maybe you know this relationship was not the most authentic relationship that you could be in. Maybe you've actually formed what is known as a trauma bond with the person, and it's not healthy at all. Maybe there's a lot of fighting and a lot of conflict and things of that nature, maybe even substance abuse in the relationship, but you're afraid to let the other person go because they're actually helping you uphold a protective adaptation in your psyche. And that protective adaptation is keeping you from feeling the loneliness and the insecurity and just these energies that other parts of you may be holding in association with your wounded inner child. So now you create an experience subconsciously. Once again, your ego self or your conscious self wouldn't necessarily agree with the creation of this because it wants things to stay safely the way they are. So on a deeper unconscious level, you create this experience where this negative entity shows up and really, excuse my French, but starts fucking your life up and starts causing this major pattern interruption. And now what can potentially take place is you have the opportunity to let go of things that are not serving you. So this being can actually cause such a pattern interruption that you start losing things. Maybe people start fighting with you. Maybe you even lose your job. But anything that you actually lose is no longer meant for you, because authenticity is powerful, and anything that's authentic for you cannot get taken away anyways. So if you notice that maybe there are things that kind of start getting pulled away from you, you want to let yourself let those things go. So if that's the relationship, let it go. If that's the job, you're working a bunch of hours and your hours get cut, be okay with that. Or if that's the job in general, let it go. If that's certain friends that maybe you've been in association with for a long time, embrace that chaos that's manifesting, let those friends go, and allow that chaos to bring a new, more authentic sense of order. And you have to trust that this is what is taking place. You are the source of everything that is taking place in your reality. And as that higher source, even though a lot of the times we create things subconsciously and unconsciously, we only create experiences that are meant to serve us. This means encounters with these negative astral entities. It is truly meant to help you, but because the higher intelligence within your unconscious knows that you would not normally let go of these things that are keeping you bound to a timeline that's not your most aligned timeline, you chose to create an experience where you now are manifesting this entity, and it's kind of, reaping havoc in your life. It's causing, this chaos to start manifesting. So you want to let go of whatever is potentially leaving your life, because this is actually going to help you, whether you know it in the moment or not, or you have the education I'm sharing or not. It's going to help you start unblending from protective adaptations in your psyche that were anchoring you to those things that you might be getting pulled away from you. So oftentimes, without knowing it, we will create a reality that's an extension of these protective adaptations within our psyche. And remember, the protective adaptations create the false self. So as we're letting go of the extension of these things, or the reality that these adaptations can sometimes create, we're also unblending from them. Now, what happens when we unblend from them? Well, look at the adaptations like a dam inside of your psyche. And this dam keeps you from experiencing all of these emotions that are existing within your system that you probably don't want to feel. And once again, this goes all the way back to early childhood trauma. So, as little holes are getting poked in that dam, now the waters of those emotions are coming to the surface. The fear, the anxiety, the paranoia, the anger, all of those negative emotions that actually created or attracted this astral entity are coming to the surface. And the solution is in the thing that you're viewing as a problem. And this is for anything, right? Whether it's an abusive relationship, some enemy that manifests, an illness, anything that's, more so of a catalyst, the answer is within the catalyst. So, same thing for this negative entity. So as these emotions are coming up, going back to what I was saying more so in the beginning of the video, you want to start training yourself to feel through the emotions, because the feeling is where the healing actually takes place. And the more you're present with these emotions, meaning you're meeting them with presence, you're not judging them. You're no longer thinking it's bad that you're experiencing them, but you're meeting them, you're facing them, and in many ways, you're immersing or emerging yourself into these emotions, being with them, even though they're uncomfortable, accepting them. This is setting the stage for you to release these suppressed negative emotions from your body and from your energetic field, and therefore you will no longer have the need to keep experiencing a psychic attack from this negative astral entity. And if you don't have the need for something, guess what? You will no longer create it anymore. And what I'm explaining to you is something that a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people think they just need to banish the entity away. They need to get rid of it. Well, guess what? Even if they can banish that particular entity, something else, whether it's another entity or whether it's some type of physical catalyst that's just in the same energetic resonance or frequency of that entity, is going to absolutely 100% show up. Because everything that we experience in our reality is us pushed out. And that entity is just essentially a piece of your own energetic resonance, reflecting that resonance back to you so you can become aware of it. And this is why on an unconscious level, you created an experience where you're under psychic attack. So you need to have acceptance for the psychic attack. It is not a bad thing. It's not something you just want to, banish away and get it over with. You actually want to see this as something that's your own creation and something that is 100% meant to serve you. And, you're getting this information from a person that has a background in the darker aspects of the occult. Meaning, I have working relationships with some of the darkest extraterrestrial forces that you can even imagine working with. Beings that when you work with them, there's a major pattern interruption, and there can be a lot of heavy catalyst that can manifest into the life experience itself. And when this happens, there's usually a letting go that needs to take place. Letting go of things that don't serve, belief systems, perceptions, unhealthy coping, identification with protective adaptations, and things of that nature. And there's going to be an emotional processing. Sometimes an emotional processing of some really heavy emotions that are even connected to early childhood trauma and even intergenerational trauma and even past life trauma as well. So this stuff can get really deep and this can be really heavy work. But what I've found is when we're creating any kind of catalyst, it is always to serve our highest evolutionary interest. And what I've found, once again, going back to the beginning of the video, is that when we're experiencing a negative astral entity, this is not an extraterrestrial force. This is not what a lot of people think it is. This is a creation of the human energy field that has gained a level of autonomy and has gained a level of sentience. And if we're attracting it, we're actually creating the experience. We're in resonance with it. And it's the universe providing a mirror to us that we can look into and we can find the solution to the problem within the mirror that entity is providing. So if you're under attack, you don't need to freak out. You don't need to bug out or anything like that. You don't need to pay for someone to try to get rid of the entity. You want to start taking a hard look at yourself and you want to build a deeper relationship with your shadow self, a deeper relationship with your trauma, a deeper relationship with the emotions that entity is actually going to serve as a trigger to start bringing to the surface so you can feel through those emotions. And as you're going through this feeling process, you're actually going to naturally, over time, maybe not overnight, but over time, raise your resonance. You're going to raise your frequency to where you're no longer in resonance with that entity. And then guess what? It cannot exist in your reality any longer.